prayer is the most powerful force in the universe. Those aren't my words. They're the words of a man who bore the wounds of Christ on his own body for 50 years. A man who could read souls bilocate across continents and perform miracles that science still cannot explain. His name was Padre Pio, and what he taught about prayer will change everything you think you know about talking to God. Stay with me until the end of this video, because I'm going to share something that happened to Padre Pio in 1918 that will completely shift how you pray. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your prayers just bounce off the ceiling? Like you're talking into an empty room and nobody's listening, you're not alone. Millions of people feel that way every single day. They pray when things go wrong. They pray when they're desperate. They pray when they have nowhere else to turn. But then nothing seems to happen, and they wonder if God is even there. Padre Pio understood this struggle more than anyone. But he discovered something that most people never learn. He discovered that prayer isn't about getting what you want. It's about becoming who you were meant to be. And when you understand this one truth, everything changes. Your relationships change. Your problems change. Even your suffering takes on a completely different meaning. Let me tell you about the moment that transformed Padre Pio's entire understanding of prayer. It was September 20th, 1918. Padre Pio was praying alone in the choir loft of the Church of Our Lady of Grace in San Giovanni Rotondo, Italy. He was kneeling before a large wooden crucifix, begging God to let him share in Christ's suffering. He had made this prayer many times before. But on this particular morning, something happened that would mark him for the rest of his life. A light appeared before him. Not like sunlight streaming through a window, not like candlelight flickering in the darkness. This was different. It was a brilliant, piercing light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And in that light, Padre Pio saw the crucified Christ. Blood flowing from his hands, his feet, his side. And as Padre Pio watched in awe and terror, rays of light shot forth from those 5 wounds and struck his own body in the exact same places. The pain was unbearable. Padre Pio later described it as feeling like he was dying. He cried out and collapsed. When his fellow friars found him, blood was pouring from his hands, his feet, and his side. The wounds went completely through his hands. You could see light passing through them from one side to the other. And these wounds would remain open and bleeding for the next 50 years until the day he died. No infection, no healing, just constant pain and constant bleeding that soaked through bandages every single day. Now, most people hear that story and think it's about suffering. They think Padre Pio was some kind of extreme mystic who wanted to torture himself for God. But that completely misses the point. The stigmata wasn't the goal. The stigmata was the result. The result of a prayer life so deep, so authentic, so completely surrendered to God that heaven and earth touched in his body. And that's what I want you to understand today. That's the power Padre Pio was talking about when he said, "Prayer is the best weapon we have." Think about that word for a second. Weapon. Not a wish. Not a suggestion. Not a polite request to a distant deity. A weapon. When a soldier goes into battle, he doesn't leave his weapon at home. He doesn't use it only when things get really bad. He keeps it with him every single moment, because he knows his life depends on it. That's how Padre Pio viewed prayer, as something essential for survival. Not physical survival, but spiritual survival. And in his mind, spiritual survival was far more important than anything happening to the body. He also said that prayer is the key to God's heart. Now, keys are interesting things. A key doesn't break down a door. It doesn't smash through a wall. A key simply fits into a lock and opens what was designed to be opened. That's what prayer does. It doesn't force God to do anything. It aligns your heart with His heart, so that what He always wanted to give you can finally be received. Most people treat prayer like a vending machine. Put in your request, press the button, expect your product. And when nothing comes out, they get angry. They feel betrayed. They walk away and say prayer doesn't work. But Padre Pio saw prayer completely differently. He saw it as a relationship. And relationships take time. They take consistency. They take honesty. They take showing up even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. Think about the people in your life who matter most to you. Your spouse, your children, your closest friends. Do you only talk to them when you need something? Do you ignore them for weeks and then show up demanding favors? Of course not. Because you know that's not how relationships work. You invest in them. You spend time with them. You listen. You share. You laugh together and cry together and just exist together. That's what prayer is supposed to be. Existing together with God. And when you start praying that way, something miraculous happens. Not necessarily miraculous in the sense of seeing visions or receiving stigmata, but miraculous in the sense that you start to change. Your perspective shifts. Your priorities rearrange themselves. Things that used to make you anxious don't bother you as much anymore. Things that used to seem insignificant suddenly matter deeply. You become more patient, more compassionate, more aware of the spiritual battle happening all around you every single day. Because make no mistake, there is a battle. Padre Pio talked about this constantly. He said the devil is real, demons are real, and they are working overtime to distract you, discourage you, and destroy your faith. He experienced this firsthand. Throughout his life, Padre Pio was physically attacked by demons. They beat him. They threw him out of bed. They appeared to him as hideous creatures and as beautiful temptations. One time, a demon appeared as a naked woman dancing in his cell trying to seduce him. Another time, demons disguised themselves as his spiritual directors and told him to stop praying and stop going to confession because he was already holy enough. But Padre Pio had a weapon: prayer. Every time the attacks came, he prayed. Sometimes he prayed the Rosary. Sometimes he prayed short prayers like, "Jesus, Mary, help me." Sometimes he just said the name of Jesus over and over again. And every single time the demons fled. They had no power over him because he was constantly connected to the source of all power. That's what I want you to understand. Prayer isn't about changing God's mind. Prayer is about changing you. It's about strengthening your spirit so that when the attacks come, and they will come, you have the strength to stand. So how do you actually do this? How do you turn prayer from something you do occasionally into something that defines your entire life? Padre Pio gave very practical advice about this. He said you should pray always, not just in church, not just before meals, not just when you're in trouble, always. Now that sounds impossible. You have work, you have responsibilities, you have a life to live. How can you possibly pray every single moment of every single day here's the secret. Padre Pio wasn't talking about formal prayers. He wasn't saying you need to be on your knees reciting the Rosary 24 hours a day. He was talking about living in a constant awareness of God's presence. It's about turning your heart toward heaven throughout the day, even while you're doing ordinary things. Let me give you some examples. You're driving to work and traffic is terrible. Everyone around you is honking and cutting each other off. Instead of getting angry, you take a breath and say a quick prayer. Jesus, give me patience. Help me see these people as you see them. That's prayer. You're cooking dinner and your mind starts replaying an argument you had earlier. You're getting worked up all over again, feeling that familiar anger rising in your chest. Instead of feeding those thoughts, you pause. You say, God, I give this to you. Help me forgive. Help me let go. That's prayer. You're lying in bed at night and anxiety about tomorrow is keeping you awake. Bills to pay. Difficult conversations to have. Problems with no clear solutions. Instead of tossing and turning for hours, you whisper into the darkness. I trust you. I don't understand what you're doing, but I trust you. That's prayer. See what's happening. You're not adding extra time to your day. You're not neglecting your responsibilities. You're simply inviting God into the moments you're already living. You're acknowledging His presence. You're asking for His help. You're surrendering your will to His will. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. It stops being something you have to remember to do and starts being something you can't imagine not doing, like breathing. You don't think about breathing. You just breathe. That's what prayer becomes when you practice it the way Padre Pio taught. But here's where it gets even more practical. Padre Pio also emphasized specific times for prayer. He said you should start your day with prayer. Before you check your phone, before you turn on the news, before you do anything else, give your first thoughts to God. It doesn't have to be long. Even 5 minutes makes a difference. Thank Him for the new day. Ask Him to guide your decisions. Surrender whatever is ahead of you into His hands. This simple act sets the tone for everything that follows. Then, throughout the day, Padre Pio recommended praying at specific moments. When you wake up, before meals, during work breaks, in the evening, before bed. These are like anchors that keep you tethered to God, no matter how chaotic life gets. And again, these don't have to be long prayers. Padre Pio once said that a single Our Father prayed with true devotion is worth more than 1,000 prayers said out of obligation. Quality matters more than quantity. Heart matters more than words. Now I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds great in theory, but my life is too busy. I barely have time to eat, let alone pray. I have kids screaming. I have deadlines. I have a million things pulling me in different directions. How am I supposed to add prayer to that chaos? And that's exactly the point. You're not supposed to add prayer to your life. You're supposed to add your life to prayer. You're supposed to bring everything you're already doing into God's presence. Let me tell you about something Padre Pio used to say to people who came to him with this exact complaint. They would say, "Father, I'm too busy to pray." And he would respond, "If you're too busy to pray, you're too busy." Then he would look at them with those piercing eyes that could see straight into their souls and say, "The busier you are, the more you need to pray. Because when you're busy, you're running on your own strength, and your own strength will fail you." But when you pray, you tap into God's strength, which never fails. Think about your phone for a second. What happens when the battery gets low? Everything slows down. Apps crash. The screen dims. Eventually, it shuts off completely. And what do? You plug it in. You recharge it, because you know you can't function without it. Your soul is the same way. When you don't pray, your spiritual battery drains. You get irritable, anxious, overwhelmed. You snap at people you love. You make bad decisions. You feel empty and restless and alone. But when you pray, you plug into the source of infinite power. You recharge. You get the strength to face whatever comes. Padre Pio lived this truth every single day. His schedule was absolutely brutal. He would wake up at 2:30 in the morning. 2:30. When most people are in the deepest part of their sleep, Padre Pio was getting up to pray. He would spend hours in prayer before celebrating Mass, and his Masses were legendary. They often lasted several hours because he was so completely absorbed in the mystery of Christ's sacrifice that time seemed to stop. After Mass, he would hear confessions for 10, 12, sometimes 16 hours straight. Thousands of people came to him, each one with their own pain, their own sins, their own desperate need for God. And Padre Pio listened to every single person. He carried their burdens. He wept with them. He challenged them. He forgave them in the name of Christ. Can you imagine the emotional and spiritual weight of that hour after hour after hour of other people's suffering pouring into your heart? Most people would collapse under that weight. Most people would burn out in a week. But Padre Pio did it for decades. How? Because he prayed constantly. Prayer was his food, his rest, his joy, his strength. Everything he gave to others, he first received from God in prayer. And here's the thing that most people don't realize. The miracles that surrounded Padre Pio's life, and there were thousands of documented miracles, didn't happen because he was special. They happened because he was available. He made himself completely available to God through prayer. He emptied himself so that God could fill him. He surrendered his will so that God's will could be done through him. That's the secret. That's the weapon. Not magical words or special formulas. Just complete surrender to God, achieved through constant prayer. Now let's get specific about how you can start doing this today. Not tomorrow. Not next week when life calms down. Today. Right now. First, commit to praying first thing in the morning. Set your alarm 5 minutes earlier if you have to. Before you do anything else, sit on the edge of your bed or kneel beside it and talk to God. Tell him you're giving him this day. Ask him to guide you. Thank him for being with you. Then pray the Our Father slowly, really thinking about each word. That's it. 5 minutes. But those 5 minutes will change everything that follows. Second, choose 3 specific moments during your day when you will pause and pray. Maybe it's during your morning coffee. Maybe it's at lunch. Maybe it's right when you get home from work. It doesn't matter when. Just choose 3 times and stick to them. Set reminders on your phone if you need to. And when those moments come, stop whatever you're doing. Take 3 deep breaths. Acknowledge God's presence. Say a quick prayer. Ask for his help with whatever you're facing. Thank him for being there. Then continue with your day. 30 seconds. That's all it takes. But if you do this consistently, you'll start noticing God's presence throughout your day in ways you never did before. Third, pray before bed. This is crucial. Padre Pio said that you should never go to sleep without examining your conscience and asking God's forgiveness for anything you did wrong that day. This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about staying honest with God and with yourself. Think back through your day. Where did you fail? Where did you succeed? Where did you see God working? Where did you resist Him? Bring it all to God. Apologize for your failures. Thank Him for His mercy. Ask Him to help you do better tomorrow. Then surrender yourself to His care and go to sleep in peace. Fourth, pray the Rosary. I know some of you aren't Catholic and the Rosary might seem strange or unnecessary. But here's what Padre Pio said about the Rosary. He said it is the weapon. When demons attacked him, he used the Rosary. When people came to him with impossible problems, he told them to pray the Rosary. When he wanted to intercede for someone, he prayed the Rosary. The Rosary is simply a way of meditating on the life of Christ while asking Mary to pray with you. That's it. You don't worship Mary. You honor her as Christ's mother and ask her to bring your prayers to her Son. And the repetitive nature of the Rosary is actually its genius. It quiets your racing mind and opens your heart to God's voice. If you've never prayed the Rosary before, start with just 1 decade. That's 1 Our Father, 10 Hail Marys, and 1 Glory Be. It takes about 2 minutes. Do this every day for a week and see what happens. You'll be amazed at the peace it brings. Fifth, talk to God like you would talk to your best friend. Padre Pio emphasized that prayer doesn't have to be formal. Yes, traditional prayers are powerful and important, but God also wants to hear your own words, your own heart. Tell Him what you're really thinking. Tell Him what you're afraid of. Tell Him what you're hoping for. Tell Him when you're angry, even if you're angry at Him. He can handle it. He wants your honesty more than your politeness. Sixth, listen. This is the part most people forget. Prayer is not a monologue, it's a dialogue. After you tell God what's on your heart, be quiet. Sit in silence. Wait. Listen. God's voice isn't usually loud or dramatic. It's more like a whisper, a gentle nudge, a sudden clarity about something that was confusing you, an unexpected sense of peace, a thought that seems to come from somewhere beyond yourself. The more you practice listening, the more you'll recognize His voice. And the more you recognize His voice, the easier it becomes to follow His guidance. Seventh, offer up your sufferings. This was huge for Padre Pio. He taught that suffering is not meaningless. When united with Christ's suffering on the cross, your pain becomes redemptive. It can actually help save souls. So when you're going through something difficult, don't just grit your teeth and endure it. Offer it to God. Say, Jesus, I unite this pain with your pain on the cross. Use it for whatever purpose you choose. Let it benefit someone who needs your grace. This doesn't make the suffering disappear, but it gives it meaning, and meaning makes everything bearable. Eighth, go to confession regularly. Now, I know not everyone watching this is Catholic, but the principle applies to everyone. You need to regularly acknowledge your sins to God and receive His forgiveness. For Catholics, that means the sacrament of confession. For others, it might mean a different approach. But either way, don't let sin build up in your heart. Don't let shame and guilt create distance between you and God. Bring it into the light. Confess it. Receive forgiveness. Start fresh. Padre Pio said that confession is like taking a bath. You wouldn't go weeks or months without bathing your body. Why would you go that long without bathing your soul? Ninth, fast. Padre Pio ate very little, some days practically nothing. He said that fasting strengthens your prayer and increases your spiritual power. When you deny your body something, it wants you're training your spirit to be in charge instead of your flesh. Start small. Maybe skip dessert one day a week. Maybe fast from social media for a day. Maybe skip a meal and spend that time in prayer. The specific form doesn't matter as much as the intention. You're telling your body, you are not in charge. My spirit is in charge, and my spirit serves God. 10th, never give up. This is the most important one. There will be days when prayer feels like a chore. There will be days when you don't feel anything. There will be days when you're convinced God isn't listening. Pray anyway. Padre Pio said that the prayer that requires the most effort is often the most valuable. When you pray, even though you don't feel like it, you're exercising pure faith. You're trusting God based on who He is, not based on what you're experiencing. And that's the kind of faith that moves mountains. Let me tell you one more story about Padre Pio that illustrates all of this perfectly. A woman once came to him in great distress. Her son had abandoned his faith, was living a sinful life, and wanted nothing to do with God or the church. She was heartbroken. She asked Padre Pio what she should do. He looked at her and said, "Pray and don't worry." She said, "But Father, I've been praying for years, and nothing has changed." Padre Pio smiled and said, "Then pray for more years. Prayer is never wasted. Every prayer you offer for your son is stored up in heaven like treasure. And one day, when the time is right, all of those prayers will be poured out on him at once, and he will be unable to resist God's grace." The woman went home and kept praying. Years passed. Her son's life got worse before it got better. But she kept praying. And then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, her son showed up at her door. He was weeping. He said he didn't know what had happened, but suddenly he felt an overwhelming desire to return to God. He went to confession. He changed his life completely. And he later told his mother that he felt like years of accumulated grace had hit him all at once, and he couldn't resist it. That's the power of persistent prayer. That's what Padre Pio was talking about when he said prayer is the key to God's heart. So here's my challenge to you. For the next 30 days, commit to praying the way I've described. Morning prayer, 3 pause moments during the day. Evening examination of conscience, just 30 days. Track it, write it down. And at the end of those 30 days, look back and see what has changed. I guarantee you'll be different. Maybe not in obvious ways. Maybe nobody else will notice. But you'll notice. You'll have more peace, more clarity, more strength, more hope. And you'll understand what Padre Pio meant when he said that prayer is the best weapon we have. Because ultimately, that's what this is about. The spiritual battle is real. The stakes are eternal. And you cannot win this battle on your own strength. You need God. You need His grace. You need His power. And prayer is how you access all of that. Prayer is how you stay connected to the source. Prayer is how you become the person God created you to be. Prayer is how you survive the storms and the attacks and the doubts and the fears. Prayer is your weapon, your lifeline, your key to heaven. So pick it up, use it, every single day, and watch what God does in your life when you finally learn to pray the way Padre Pio prayed.